What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you an interesting one today. So teams are about 2 weeks now into scrimming the game, and we're talking about a potential GA to the M4. Let's break down some of the conversation on social media yesterday, talk a little bit about some of the next steps and where we go from here. Let's dive in. So basically, this all started after scrims yesterday. Austin Litico, aka Slasher, who is on Atlanta FaZe, tweeted, "Yo, any idea why I'm using an XM4? Gun got GA'd in 2020. For those unaware, he's making a joke about the XM4 from a past game that did end up getting GA'd when teams are running 3 and 4 of them, and we'll talk about that later in the video. He's talking about how good the M4 is in this game. There's been a few GAs and gun tweaks. ARs aren't using the scars they were using at the beginning of the game. They've kind of discovered this iron sight M4 build is very good, and so it seems like from Austin's perspective, he thinks the gun is a little bit broken. And I don't think he's alone in this. A couple of other sub players and sort of flex players kind of followed up on Twitter after this. Vance tweeted, "M4 best gun in the game. The ARs will still try to convince you that the Vaznev is," and a little bit of the thinking face emoji. And then Pred actually responded to Slasher's tweet and said, "Please let's GA it, bro." Funny enough, on this point, Austin responded to Pred and said, "I was just on the phone with my duo, Mr. I bet he's talking about Accuracy, who they've been roommates before, and he wasn't down, need to get it together on the search cam." So let me kind of explain this convo and sort of where kind of we stand table set wise. So for those that are newer, the way this whole gentleman's agreement process works is there's a group message on Twitter with representatives from all of the 12 teams. I would say historically, and I believe this year as well, predominantly mostly AR players kind of filled that group, and I believe there's only like 1 or 2 sub players that are in that group this year. And this has caused tension in the past, and again, I'm gonna talk about that later in the video when we kind of talk about next steps. So the kind of meme for a long time was, again, AR dominant, is that Slasher and Accuracy kind of were the ones always leading the GA charge. There was some conversation on Reddit kind of about this last night. I think it led to Slasher tweeting this late at night. By the way, I've noticed there's a lot of people nowadays who think I just make decisions to benefit myself. I GA'd part of a gun after dropping a 1.3 with it. He's referring to a past year. Wake up, I want the game to get better. I think Austin went on to kind of even further kind of explain why he thinks the gun should be restricted in response to amateur player Mock, who said, Mock basically said that the M4 does not really have like fast ADS time, and if you're not pre-aiming, you are chalked, which Austin responded, "I hip fire and get hip fired cross map by it." I think he's gassing the hip fire cross map, but sure, doesn't matter too much if it aims in slow doing that, but I agree that ADS should be faster in ARs overall, but the M4 creates inconsistent gunfights IMO. All right, so like where do we go from here? I could look, as we watch some footage here of Zen playing a little bit of Control, and I was talking about this on stream last night. We're watching scrims with Nameless and Zuma. I think watching the M4, it definitely does feel like at times, at least watching scrims yesterday, that is the best gun in the game. It's not to say that subs aren't good or shoot back, but as you see with some of these gunfights, man, like if you are, pre-firing with the M4 and still ADSing, that like hip fire bullets do connect a lot. And so I can feel and understand why a lot of sub players definitely feel like they get nuked on times in this game. Again, it's a high TTK game. This isn't like a Black Ops 2 type style game. If you hit your first bullets, you're gonna win those gunfights. So look, I think next steps on this whole sort of exercise is pretty interesting. There's a question of whether or not this gun will be GA or not, I think, is number one. I have not heard as of this morning, I'm recording this on Wednesday morning, if the gun has been GA'd at all, but obviously, as my luck when I make these videos, obviously things change pretty quick. I do expect this afternoon, however, to start seeing teams experiment with 3, maybe sometimes 4 of them on the map. It does feel like as you watch some of these fights, when you just sort of pre-aim hip fire with this gun, especially like the medium range, it is going to be a little bit better than say the Vaznev. And so I can kind of see some teams trying that 3 or 4 build out and see how it goes in scrims today. And then if the game kind of doesn't play well, that has in the past, and that's where Austin was referring to the XM4 situation, kind of kickstarted the well. Now this is kind of a dumb meta. Let's talk about what we want to do with this gun. So I think overall we might see an M4 GA by the end of the week, but people might hold their ground and it might take a sec before we get a resolution on this conversation. I think this kind of also opens up a door to something that I think we'll discuss kind of in future videos about. I don't think there's an agreement amongst the pros on what they actually want the game to play like. Do they want this to be more of a sturdier pre-aim type COD year to year where ARs are favored? Do they want kind of the more snappy kind of run and gun meta that there are some sub players that really like that? There's always been a disparity in that thinking between teams and players themselves, honestly, on that front. So it's a very nuanced topic, and I think one for another more deeper video, and I honestly want to bring pros on to really talk about it. And I think if you ask sub players, they feel like they're underrepresented in these conversations. So it's an interesting one for sure. I think another thing to also look out for on this M4 front is we haven't really seen or heard from Luti and sort of the EU challengers side. Again, there's a Challengers Cup coming up this weekend, and I'm very curious on the EU side as they are sort of starting to get on as I'm recording this now and get ready for scrims, if they may actually go ahead and GA the M4 before the pros do. That's happened a couple of times over the last couple of years that EU challengers moves a little bit faster than the NA pro scene or even the NA challenger scene. But I think this situation is going to evolve pretty quickly over the next couple of days. So I think one more final thing, and this is sort of tied to the M4 thing, because I feel like the AR issues a little bit in this game are exacerbated by the fast TTK. Again, it's super fast, so if you're pre-aiming and you're hitting that first bullet, or your hip fire bullet on your pre-fires hitting, you're going to get and probably win those gunfights in situations where you probably shouldn't. I do think there's a conversation to be had about, do we want to play with higher health? Now, I know this takes us away from the main game meta, and there's a lot of cascading conversations around this. I kind of think back to this tweet from Hitch a couple of days ago that he sent to Spencer when he was bantering about the updates to the rule set. I would love for us to have a community conversation if maybe we want to, think about increasing the health. And there's some other knockdown effects and kind of ideas here. Now, I know Hitch kind of mentions enabling quick fix. I think put that to the side for a second. I do think what might help sort of give sub players more tools is overclocked, allowing more dead silence. You get really an advantage in those silent-ish footsteps. I think there's a conversation to be had here about some potential tweaks to sort of the base game on this front, but I haven't heard anything of pros are kind of down to try this. Teams are down to try this. Again, we've seen this with the whole Rambo thing about using worse guns and higher health. I've asked around and haven't really gotten really a strong answer on whether or not people are sort of down for this. I think it's tied to this M4 conversation, and I'm very curious if now sort of the window is open to really dive in on this one and try it out and see if the 130 health actually makes the gameplay a little bit better. So yeah, that's the video, guys. I think this conversation is going to move pretty quick. Like, I hope when I make this video Wednesday morning and it comes out Wednesday, that hasn't already gotten GA, because this whole video would have been hilarious, but it is what it is. Let me know in the comments what y'all think. I'm sure y'all have some strong opinions on this one. GAs are always a hot button topic in the community, so let me know what you guys think. Like if you love the content, subscribe for more. I'm really excited this week. We're going to keep doing more kind of coverage as sort of the scrim meta evolves. We've also got the cup on the challenger side coming up this weekend. I'm going to do some preview content later in the week to get you guys ready for that one. And then starting at some point over the next week or so, we're going to start doing individual team previews running up to the first matches of the season. So be on the lookout for those. Those will be coming in shortly. As always, guys, we'll see you on the next video.